guys, welcome back to episode 90 of the Hops and Bops podcast. I am always a producer Tom, back from a little bit of a 1 week hiatus, but we're back, and I'm doing another blind reaction. This time it's going to be to the brand new Drake album that just dropped called Honestly, Nevermind. This was a surprise release. No one really knew about this until a few hours beforehand last night at midnight when it dropped, and I'm going to be listening to it for the first time. And in true Canadian spirit, I'm going to be drinking a Labatt Blue. This is a Canadian Pilsner. I've never had it before, but Drake's from Toronto. I figured I'd splurge a little bit on the Canadian side. So yeah, we're gonna crack this one open, and we're gonna see, where did my keychain go? So according to the LabattUSA.com website, the Labatt Blue Canadian Pilsner is the world's best-selling Canadian beer, brewed with the finest ingredients including renowned Hallertau hops, two-row malted barley, and pure Canadian barley. Labatt Blue has a clean, refreshing taste with distinct hop aroma, delicate fruit flavor, and slightly sweet aftertaste. So that is usually a good sign. I've never had an issue with a sweet aftertaste or like a fruitiness to it. So yeah, I guess we'll jump into it. Cheers. Cheers. Okay. I don't know if I taste any of that fruitiness, but it's definitely, along the lines of traditional American beers, I would say. Similar style to Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light. I do like the choice of hops. I like those Hallertaus. But you get that malted barley kind of flavor that you're going to get with any kind of American beer as well. Or any kind of, widely distributed American beer. But yeah, I can definitely see why this would be a very popular drink to bring across. If you are a bit closer north towards the border, I could definitely see you bringing this to a hangout or some kind of sporting event or whatever it is. It's pretty solid. It's definitely not something that I'm going to go get from a store again. I was actually thinking of doing Molson's for this because that's just a Canadian beer in my mind, but they only sold in like 12 or 30 racks, and I didn't want to spend all that money, so I got a 6-pack of these for $8. So pretty decent price too. I mean, that's always a plus. There's a little bit of fruitiness there. There's a little bit of that sweet, fruity aftertaste. Not too much, but it definitely gives you a little bit of an edge over those other kind of beers. So they actually started in 1847, which is very interesting. Super deep history. And yeah, it's a storied beer. It's something that our brothers from the north have been drinking for quite some time, and I can definitely see why. Is it something I'm going to be returning to over and over and over again? Probably not. But for when you have it, it's decent. I can now see if it's at like a party or in like some kind of big selection of beers. I could see myself reaching for this. If none of my other favorites are available, I guess. But pretty solid taste, and I guess pivoting from that. Actually, that's a great idea. Where are they from specifically in Canada? Oh, okay. All right. So it says on the side of the bottle, Union Made Product of Canada, Brewing Company of Canada, Toronto. So that is a very interesting transition into our artist of choice, Drake, who I believe is from Toronto as well. This is his album, Honestly, Nevermind. If you are unaware of what's going on, Drake is one of the biggest selling, biggest streamed artists of all time, or at least especially right now. He's very, very popular. I think he's in the top 10 of like streams as of right now. He's number 8 in the world for current streams. Almost 58 million monthly listeners, which is just insane. And just a little bit of a backstory. He was an actor on the show Degrassi, which is where he got his big come up. He kind of started off as an actor and then transitioned more into music after that. And obviously, when his music started coming out, that's when he really started skyrocketing into this globally world-renowned artist. You know who Drake is. I don't need to explain it too much. But in my personal opinion, I think he has released some of the most important hip hop of the early 2010s. I consider Take Care to be his best album of all time. He really showcased what he can do on that. Nothing Was the Same afterwards, I think, was very good as well. And I think if you're reading This Is Too Late and What a Time to Be Alive, both came out in 2015, I think were the last really big hurrah of Drake's record catalog, I guess. Drake stans can disagree with that all they want, but that's just my personal opinion. Ever since Views came out in 2016, I've never really been too much into Drake. Again, there's tracks here and there that are great. I really love Hotline Bling off of Views. Grapefruit off of More Life is pretty good. Scorpion had a couple tracks here and there. I can't really remember off the top of my head. But once you get into like Care Package and like the Dark Lane demo tape stuff, it just did not do it for me. Even Certified Lover Boy, I listened to it last year and it just did not do anything for me. It was just so spaced out. Drake had very low energy on the project. There wasn't really a focus on it. He kind of seemed like he just pushed it out to get a lot of the attention from the Kanye beef he was in at the time. And it was just not great. And I've also not heard great things about his newest album called Honestly Nevermind. So it's 14 tracks, 52 minutes, just under an hour. I'm pretty happy about that, I guess, because his last album was an hour and a half with 21 songs. It just felt bloated and it felt weighed down by all these middle-of-the-road tracks that did nothing for me. And some laughably bad lyrics, like he leads off a track on the last album and he says, like, say that you're a lesbian, girl, me too. And that's just like a middle school line. That's just something you say to your friends, like, oh man, she's a lesbian, I guess I am too. It was just embarrassing. And Drake fans hyped it up saying, like, oh no, it's funny, man. If someone else did that line, it would be funny, which it would be. But Drake is just so pompous and he thinks he can still be like this lady slayer when at this point it's been revealed that he has a child, an unwanted child that he wanted to keep away, but then he got in a beef with Pusha T, the rapper, a couple years ago, and he just destroyed him. And so Drake has just been open about this kid that he's had, and it's really changed his view in the mainstream, and I think for my opinion as well. And there's nothing wrong with having a kid, obviously. It's just the way that he portrayed this lifestyle of being like the ladies guy, even naming his last album Certified Lover Boy while being a father. It was just a strange look. So I'm jumping in blind to this new album, Honestly Nevermind. Kind of a weird album cover, just kind of like drippy, like gothic stylized font. That's just it's a little fuzzy too. It's not even like the best quality looking album cover, but it's an album cover. Who really cares? This album came out at midnight last night. I was going to stay up and listen to it, but I have a job, so I can't really do that anymore. But yeah, you know what? Let's just jump into it. I've seen a lot of bad things about this album online. People have said things that I don't really want to get spoiled for me. I do have low expectations, even though Drake is one of the more culturally significant rappers of our period, of our generation, really. You know, let's just do it. It's 14 tracks. It's better than like 21 or 30 tracks, you know. I'm just going to put the headphones in, and I guess we'll start at intro. The intro with 36 seconds in the very beginning. Let's just do it. Okay, so I actually ended up listening to the second track after that called Falling Back. Intro really did nothing, just super spacey, kind of atmospheric, which I'm going to assume is going to happen for the rest of the album. It was interesting, though, when I felt like when I was listening to this album and I just felt like I was scrolling Twitter. Like, there's really nothing that drew me towards it. It did sound kind of moody and distant. It felt like it was not necessarily a rap album. He really didn't do much rapping at all. He just kind of sang and then did this little, like, high pitch, not really high pitch, but falsetto singing of Falling Back over and over again. That really, I mean, it was fine while it was on. It definitely felt like more of a dance track than a rap track. and which was interesting because I saw a tweet online, and it said Drake's Honestly Nevermind broke Apple Music's dance album record for most first day streams, which is interesting because he only did it in like, however many hours. It's spent like 12 hours or so. So it's interesting that they're billing this album as a dance album. So that's going to impact me a little bit going forward, just considering what everything Drake's been towards. Obviously in the mid 2010s, he had like that weird patois dance hall style when he did like when he did tracks on What a Time to Be Alive, I believe. Just kind of having this huge, like, One Dance, for example, that was on Views, during the Views era, when he kind of had this weird, like, when he's saying, like, mad tings and trying to be Jamaican, having this weird patois, like I was saying before. So that was a time he was going a little bit more dance-ish, not really sticking to his rap roots. Didn't really do anything for me. It was fine while it was on. It was just passable. But if that's the first taste of what we're getting on the album, then I will be concerned, to say the least. So, next track is Texts Go Green. And just to mention, I think there's only one feature on this album. It's 21 Savage on the last track, so that will be interesting to hear going forward. But this is all going to be Drake, I guess. So, Texts Go Green, I guess we'll jump into that one as well. Okay, so Texts Go Green. That kind of confirmed my bias, not really bias, but my kind of understanding of the album is going to be a bit more house-centric, or like kind of having those dance hall house vibes to it, which is totally fine to do in concept, but I think I came to the conclusion in that song that I think Drake is kind of modeling himself after the Jack Harlow idea of, making music for the females and for people who just want to dance. And while I can't say that formula is necessarily working for Jack Harlow, because his last album was honestly pretty trash in my opinion, but I mean, you know what, we're about to hit a recession, and Drake's just making music that's gonna be played at like the H&M or like a Sephora or some other kind of store like that that'll play, house traps or things like that. So he's really, in my opinion, it sounds like he's making this for monetary benefits, which kind of affects the artistry a little bit. I mean, I might be wrong, obviously, but there's people saying that Drake already responded to negative opinions on it already. He responds to people calling out his new album trash. So he basically said, "It's all good if you don't get it yet. That's what we do. We wait for you to catch up. We're already here, though. We caught up already. On to the next." Defending your new album that literally just came out is reasonable, and I understand it. But I don't know. It's just like, his roots aren't there. The things that made him likable aren't really there. I think there's a little bit of touch of So Far Gone era, like very early on in his career. Like when he was kind of putting out like, "You the fucking best, you the fucking best," like Thank Me Later, like those kind of tracks. It sounds like he's kind of throwing it back to there, but if that was specifically like house related, like the style of music house. So interesting choice. Not entirely sure the reasoning behind it. Kind of getting more and more bored with each track, but we continue with the track Currents. The fourth track, I guess we will just let's give it a listen. All right, the track Currents. Really a do-nothing track, really did nothing for me at all. It was just really, really funny at a point in the beginning because he uses like this bed creaking as like a beat to go forward. It was just like, it was just really funny. Drake did barely anything on the track. It felt like a 2.5 minute interlude. It was just really funny. At one point he uses like gun loading sounds, even though Tyler the Creator and countless other artists that have been doing that for years. I don't know. It was just the funniest, but in a bad way. And it kept going. Like, he kept going and kept using it for a while after that. I don't know. It's fun to, like, shake your ass to, I bet. Like, I was kind of, like, doing this a little bit, just kind of, like, squirming around, which is fine if that's what you just want your music to be. But when you want to have some kind of artistic merit, I don't know. It just felt... it didn't really do anything really for me. It just kind of felt hollow. So let's continue this happy fun time that we're having with the track A Keeper, the 5th track. Ba-bam. Okay, that track wasn't terrible. I mean, I think there's a difference in vibes, you know, when you're listening to an album like this. And I think when I call back to when we're listening to like a reggae album, for example, I always consider the position in which you're listening in, right? When you're listening to, or at least in my opinion, when you're listening to a reggae album, it's much nicer to experience it if you're in a tropical place, or at least like on the water or with the sun shining at some point. If you're listening to reggae like me right now in a closed room on a Friday afternoon, you know, it's a little bit different, you know? So I think that applies to this album as well, especially for this track. And I think for this album that applies too, in a sense. You know, it's a house-inspired album. You're going to get a lot of dance tracks. And I think the places this will play well at will be in the club, which I think was Drake's target demographic when he was making this album. And it will probably do well in, like, you know, retail stores or places that just play a lot of house tracks. So when I'm playing it now, or when I go to search it on my own, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of these kind of bigger style dance tracks. They're fine when they're on, but I would never really go search or like seek them out personally. So listening to it now doesn't really get that deep for me, but I will say near the end I was bobbing my head a lot. I was doing a lot of this. So I think that's really the only goal of this album, is just to get you to do this and just move your head around a little bit. So, you know, while it's on, it's fine. It's a vibe. It's okay. But when you're looking at it deeper, there's nothing beyond that. There's some kind of emotional disparity that Drake's going through, kind of saying, why would I keep you around? You're not really a keeper, and going through some kind of turmoil in some relationship. But you can apply that to literally dozens of Drake albums at this point. So does it scratch that itch that you really want it to? You know, depends on what kind of listening experience you want. If you want a more lyrical, harder hitting Drake, not really going to get it on this. If you want a moodier, like, if you listen to the track Passion Fruit, which I think was a pretty decent track, I think you will enjoy this album if you like that song. Yeah, so going into track 6, Calling My Name. It's only 2 minutes and 9 seconds. I guess we will jump into that one now. Okay, so get this. The reason this track is called Calling My Name is because in like the last third of the track, he's like chopped up vocally, and he's going, "Your pussy is calling my name," and then he says something else that I couldn't really understand. For someone of Drake's, you know, parental status, to be doing that, like if you heard your dad say those lines, it would make you sick. And if I was Drake's child and I went back and listened to his lyrics, especially on this album, I would be like, that's gross. And again, he doesn't really write albums or write music for that situation, but I don't know, it just seemed kind of gross. And there's, again, I know I keep repeating myself, but there's really just not a lot of substance to this. It didn't really do too much for me. But I did hear that the next track, Sticky, was pretty good. I heard that was pretty good online, as well as the last track, Jimmy Cooks. But we are on track 7, Sticky. Let's do it, I guess. Okay. Track 7, Sticky. It was fine. It was the first time Drake actually sounded like himself a little bit more. Definitely had the first heavy dosage of rapping, and he sounded a lot more confident on it. Still had those heavy house style percussions in the back, those really heavy bass hits, though boom, 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 boom. Just kept going through that track as well. I honestly can't really grasp onto much here. Same thing I kept saying before. If it was played in the club, sure, people would like it. In a dancing style situation, sure. I just wasn't really expecting a dance album from Drake, which is kind of interesting. He's definitely done a lot more singing on this than I anticipated as well. But he's just trying to make that money, I guess, and more power to him, trying to do that. Would I put Sticky as one of my favorites? No, probably not. But it's definitely a standout so far. It just kind of came in this slog of samey, so-so Drake dance hall tracks. Not really dance hall, but just like those style of dance tracks. Yeah. And a very long outro, too. Not really needed. A lot of skipping around I'm doing on this. I'm listening to the full tracks, but if it's just so repetitive at the end, I'll just kind of skip forward to see if there's any other kind of level of substance to dive into, but just really wasn't necessary to stretch out to 4 minutes. But the next track, Massive, comes up after this. Maybe this one will take us out of this weird slog of so-so dance tracks. So let's do it. Okay, the track Massive, I think is probably the best track on the album so far. It just had the most energy. It had a really cool vibe to it. It just had like the widest musical range to it. I think it just had more going on than I think most of the other ones did. This one, you put on the club, people are throwing ass and dancing really hard. So I enjoyed it. The only issue that I really had with it, it's 5.5 minutes. It really only needed to be like 3.5 minutes. I think once you get to that level, then it was fine. But when you get to 2 extra minutes of just nothing and repeating the same ideas, but just less each and every time, it really degrades as it goes on. And it's just like, why the fuck would you even make it that long if it's all it does, But regardless, I enjoyed the track. I thought it was pretty good. I could see that one being one of the bigger tracks going forward. I'm not entirely sure what the singles look like as of right now, but Massive I think was probably my favorite so far. But we will continue. We got Flights Booked after that, track 9. Let's do it. All right, so Flights Booked, pretty much more the same. Really just do nothing, feel nothing house track. If you're into that, then whatever. If you just kind of want to scroll Twitter and not really pay attention. I was watching a video of an outtake of Robin Williams playing with Elmo, and he said some bad words, and it was funny. That was infinitely more interesting than that track. But I will say the next track, Overdrive, pretty interesting. Sounded a bit more like what The Weeknd's trying to do with some of his newer stuff. A bit more 80s inspired. Had a bit more of like a guitar, not really like a high fidelity one, but kind of just like a little strumming, not really, kind of like not palm muted, I guess is what I'm looking for, or maybe it's just like a bass. I'm not entirely sure. Was it over the top interesting? No, not by a long shot. But I thought it was still a good track. I think it had its merits. At least had something that you could grasp onto. A lot of the tracks on here don't really have that, and yeah, I think it was worthwhile to listen to, the track Overdrive. Following that up, you have Downhill. I think that's how my album experience is turning out to be. It's just all going downhill. But maybe these last couple of tracks can save it for me. So let's test that out. All right, honestly, I listened to tracks 11, 12, and 13, those being Downhill, Tie That Binds, and Liability. Really not a lot there for me. Liability just sounded like Drake was kind of drunk, or like just slowly pitch shifted down, just kind of singing, really doing nothing at all. Tie That Binds out of these three was probably the most interesting. Had this guitar kind of Latin feel to it that kind of added a bit of a tinge there. But again, 5.5 minute track. The last minute and a half, 2 minutes could have just been cut easily and it would have been a much better track. And Downhill was boring and forgettable. That was track 11 out of track 11, 12, and 13, and I really don't even remember too much about it. It was just so do nothing and say nothing that it just didn't even leave any impact on me. So, yeah, the last little bit of hope left for this album is the track Jimmy Cooks, the finale on the album. It features 21 Savage. It is the first labeled feature. I'm assuming there's other features, or maybe just, some kind of additional help across the album, but it's not really labeled as such. So all I know is that 21 Savage is on this one, and I heard his feature is pretty good. So let's hope we can tie this album up and get some kind of bigger message or some kind of big hit out of this album that we didn't really get on a lot of the other tracks. Last track, Jimmy Cooks. Let's do it. Finally! Alright, finally, there's a track that I thought should have been what the rest of the album sounds like, It was definitely the most standard Drake track, obviously, but had this cool, God, I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's just kind of ominous, eerie vibe to the beat behind it. Straightforward trap beats, hi-hats, very rattling. Drake's rapping was okay. It was Drake standard, obviously. But I think 21 Savage came in and kind of saved it. Maybe not saved it, but added his own energy that you're used to with a 21 feature, who I think is actually one of the better featured artists, and he has some good albums under his belt too. But that's probably my favorite track. Definitely had a great energy. I was really bobbing my head, not because it was a dance song, but it was just a grimy trap song that you're used to from Drake. So if you're a rap head, that's the track you're going to gravitate towards. If you're not, the rest of the album is for you. So we're done. We're done with honestly Nevermind. Not for me, but I can understand why other people would like it. It's for the clubs. It's for retail stores, I guess. It's for girls who just want to shake some ass and not really think about it. But there's parts where it isn't really that, even though it's framed like that, if that makes sense. There's these very long, drawn-out instrumentals at the end of tracks. There's weird parts where there's no instrumental at all, and it's just like some interlude. So I don't really know if they nailed their marketing decisions as heavily as they wanted to. I will probably not be coming back to this album anytime soon, but if it's on and I'm at the club or if I'm at some kind of big social gathering and it's on, I'm not going to be complaining. I think it's more ambitious of an album as he's dropped since Scorpion. I think that was probably his last ambitious thing, that even though that album kind of fell flat on its face in some aspects. At least with this, he had a clear vision going forward. It wasn't just to put songs into playlists or whatever you want it to be. It's for a specific sound, even if he didn't master that sound. And I think at least that's better than nothing. So, that's the album. I guess I'll rate it. It's not something that I, again, would return to. I guess I'll give you my favorite tracks and my least favorite tracks in a sleeper, just because that's what we do here. My favorite track was Jimmy Cooks, obviously the last track with 21 Savage. Brought back the Drake that we're all used to and we know can succeed. And 21 Savage had a great feature as well. Picked up a lot of that energy from just 3 or 4 bland, boring cuts, in my opinion. My least favorite was probably Currents. Just had a weird beat. That bed creaking sound, like I mentioned before, was just so uninteresting and just did not do anything for me. It was more funny at times just to laugh at as a goof. Really, you put that on a track. Anyway, and my sleeper is probably going to be Massive. Had a bit more of a booming feel to it and a bit more of a traditional house beat that I think can resonate with a lot of different listeners of any era or genre. And I think that's, at the end of the day, what Drake is going for. He's trying to reach out into this field that he's not familiar with and just kind of grab other listeners. So if that's what he wants to do, I think he did it on that track. But in my opinion, he did not do it for the whole album. A+ for effort, but it kind of just didn't resonate with me. If I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it around a 4 or so, maybe a 3.5, somewhere in that area. I can understand what he's trying to do, but it just did not work with me. But if it's on, it's on. I'm okay with it. Yeah, probably about a 4, I'd say. And yeah, that's gonna do it. As for the Labatt's Blue, though, the Canadian Pilsner, not too impressed, but also not too disappointed. Pretty similar with this album. I'm gonna rate this slightly higher, probably about a 5, maybe 5.5. Pretty solid beer. You know what you're gonna get with it. It's right down the line. It's that same malty barley style that you're used to with any kind of light beer, or Pilsner, or any kind of style of Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light. All these kind of beers are right down the middle with Labatt's. So if you're into that kind of thing, go ahead and try one out. But I'm not necessarily going to seek it out again, much like this album. So these two really do tie together. But I finished most of it, so it's not like I took a sip and it was just some disgusting like quadruple IPA with 5 times dry hopped, any kind of big focus on it. It's just a standard like dad beer. If you ever saw that TikTok of the guy, it's like, whatever happened to beers and fruit being put into them? Like, I feel like he would drink a Labatt. So yeah, that's gonna do it for me here. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. This was an interesting experience for sure. And episode 91 will be coming out sometime in the future. It's just been really tough with school ending for everyone and us trying to get together. We live so far away. So you will be seeing me do an album with a couple bands that I am really excited to do going forward, and maybe some local rappers as well. I have some friends that have been reaching out to me wanting to be jumping on the podcast, so I don't want to spoil who it is just yet, but they are very interesting characters, and expect a couple great episodes going forward in that. That's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching Hops and Bops podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. We have a website now. Go check us out on any kind of streaming service. Most of them we're on like Audible and other things like that too, if you want to check us out there. If you want to let us know what album we should cover going forward, or what kind of beer we want to do going forward. If you're on Spotify listening to this, there's a Q&A down at the bottom that just says what beers or albums should we do going forward. Let us know. If you put one in there, we're most likely going to do it. So, give us some interactions. If you liked what we do here, give us 5 stars, I guess, is a thing you could do on streaming services. And, or like the video if you're on YouTube, always very appreciated. I record and edit these within like 2 days to get them put out, and it's a lot of work. So, your interactions are very, very valuable for me, and all that good stuff as well. So episode 91, looking forward to that going forward in the future. We will see what it's going to be. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Peace.